Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Mary Grace, and we are coming to you live today with a great conversation that we've had several times. We have with us Dr. Troy Spurrill from Synapse Center for Health and Healing. He has a unique offering for all of our folks, not only in the US, but in several different countries. His team offers telemedicine for functional medicine, and he's going to explain a little bit about that to us. But I just wanted to welcome you to the show, Dr. Troy. It's great to have you here.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're very excited to have you because since the first time you've come on the show, we've had several of our listeners come on board with your team. And I think most of them are doing telemedicine. I think some have come in, but overall, I'm getting excellent feedback, a positive experience. People are so excited because they're getting to have real conversations with a practitioner who isn't just looking at the clock and trying to get rid of them so they can bill for the 15 minutes. And it's such a it's such a different model because people are saying, they're actually listening to me and they have a plan that is helping me to understand me and
Yeah.
my issues. And it's not just a computer console where they're plugging in the words and getting the cookie cutter answer spit out. And so that's really encouraging. Um, One of the things that I think is confusing to people is that there's different kinds of alternatives when it comes to medicine. Can you explain functional medicine and tell us just what that is and how it's different from traditional, but
Yeah.
also kind of what separates you from some of the other different paths that people could take?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start with just the quick definition of our traditional system and why we see it failing. So first of all, our emergency healthcare system is bang on. It's good. We don't want to change that. They're elite. So let's just keep that the same. When it comes to the rest of the healthcare system, it's all based off of research, which is great. But remember, it's also based off of what will insurance cover. And just like car
Mhm.
insurance, just like house insurance, they don't actually cover anything until there's damage. So
Hmm.
our current system is set up to only cover your healthcare needs when you've got
Mhm.
damage to your body. So that's disease or some level of trauma. So that it's a disease management system. In functional medicine, we're looking at how did God make us? How are things communicating mentally, chemically, and physically, and even spiritually? When there's a breakdown in communication, that's when you see dysfunction, and dysfunction always precedes disease. So we measure function. If we
Okay.
can see if there's dysfunction that we can measure using the same scientific methods as traditional medicine, but looking at the body differently through the lens of how we were created and how we're supposed to communicate, you can start to measure dysfunction early on and prevent disease. So that's what we do. We get to the foundation root cause. And I will say this, the people that we have worked with from your show, I love because they're all very educated and they come in with questions. And what we hear the most is, I've been looking for this my entire life. So that part's been like awesome to work with. Um, what separates us, I would say, is with great humility. I'm going to say that I have focused on, again, putting things through God's lens. I'm going to say so. I say Jesus is my CEO. He runs my clinic.
Mm,
And so, with that being said, I don't do cookie cutter. This is how you run a business. I believe we each have a different gift, and instead of hiring someone to then say do it this way, I hire someone, figure out what their gift is, and get them in the right spot. And so, with that, then
mhm.
people love doing what they're doing for the most part, and we have created some unique things that are unique to us. So, for example, I don't even know if you know this, but I am also a functional neurologist and a molecular biologist and a kinesiologist. So
No.
I yeah, so I created a technique back during the Gulf War for post-traumatic war veterans. I created a technique that resets the physical implications of stress. And so we are the only clinic in the world doing that because I created that process. It's a neurologic process that recognizes when stress is impacting us. Now, you have to do it in person, so people travel here from all over the world, but we incorporate that into our programs, and it's a game changer for a lot of people when we can actually undo the physical reactions of stress. For example, when you have stress, your muscles tighten. Well, that's just one reaction in your body. We also see blood pressure go up. We see your cells fold over on each other. So we combine that with some of our other technologies. We use an endopat machine, which measures your cardiovascular response. The technology comes out of Israel. And when you combine that with a multitude of other things like the lab reports that we do for our patients, our standard lab report is 39 pages long. We look at
Yeah.
all the patterns in there. So
Mhm.
we spend a lot of time meeting as a team and then a lot of time looking for patterns in your blood work, questionnaires, physical exams. It's very, very functional oriented. And we meet each and every day as a team. So our medical doctor, our PAs, our nurses, our chiropractors, our nutritionists, our coaches, we all meet together, and we focus on heart first, so people have that work for me have to have a heart and then the brain to back it up.
Mm.
For example, one of our coaches this last week, we have a patient who's 16 years old. She's on her own, not living with her mother or father, and so she met her at the grocery store and on a Sunday showed her how to shop, to eat healthy and be there.
Mm.
I met with the 16-year-old afterwards later that week, and she said it was a life-changing moment for her because someone cared. And so
Mm.
that you can't put that into a protocol.
Right.
That's
Right.
the heart of a person.
Yes, and I think, I mean, that's really key, right? Because it affects everything that we do and all that we are. And I think it's interesting that you have this system that addresses stress, the
Yeah,
impacts of stress, because there's so much emotion tied into it. And I don't know that in the traditional medical space, they actually understand or much less acknowledge that because they're just looking at how to fix the system,
yeah,
the body systems. They're looking at fixing the problem and not addressing the root of it. And I saw that firsthand when I was, taking my dad into the hospital. He was in twice in July. We thought that he was having a stroke, and it turned out to be something else, but they're doing all the tests and they're finding things in the CT and the MRI of past issues. And I don't want to go too deep into that, but my question to them was, well, if all of the medications that he was taking prior till now that were supposed to prevent these things, if they worked, then why are we seeing these things on the CT scan?
yeah,
And they can't answer that question.
yeah,
They're just like, no, just take the pill. And so they get really flustered, especially because I noticed too that they're specialists in one area
yeah,
and they get very siloed, and they don't know what the cardiology people say. Like the neurology guy um, just says, "Well, this is what I know about this, and this is the research on this, and I know that this study says that you
yeah,
have to do this," and that's their model, and that's where they are. But I get frustrated because I really know and believe, and I'm finding out more and more that there's more than that. So, this is it's very exciting, to have people like you that are available not just in your local area, but all over. And tell me again, you work with patients in all 50 states,
yeah.
right? And beyond. How many countries are you
Uh,
available
Currently
to?
12 countries. We just had someone reach out to us from which will be our 13th country if they follow through. So we don't actually put
Right.
them on. We have a map in our front lobby, and
Okay.
we don't put it on there unless we've actually onboard them as a patient. So
That's exciting. So
mhm,
because I have a lot of international listeners, and
yeah,
I have people in South Africa, Australia, Canada. I know I'm missing some. Forgive me if I missed you, but it is exciting because especially with the systems in some of those countries that have gone, I don't want to say the word, but um, not really patient centered.
Yeah.
It's government focused, and
Yeah.
so those of you who are listening in from those places, make sure you give Dr. Troy's clinic a look. I'm going to put the link up here. It's Synapse, official synapse.com. It's official SYNAPSE. And the phone number is 651 209 9906. 651 209 9906. And just tell them that Mary Grace sent you when you do that, because they're going to want to know who referred you. So I wish I was thinking, it'd be good to camp out on this stress piece for a minute. I
Mhm.
know we want to talk about some prevention, but I have a feeling this might actually be the answer that somebody's looking for today. And I don't want to move on from that too quickly. You talked about post-traumatic stress, and we know that that's an issue for a lot of our military and our veterans. But what about people who have been in stressful life situations, whether it's major life changes, divorce, death of a parent, death of a family member, caregiving? That's a big one for a lot of our
Yeah.
listeners. Would those count in that space of stress as well? Do people experience post-traumatic stress from those types of things or ongoing stress?
So great question because again, I don't think you know this, but when I had that breakthrough with that Gulf War vet, he had locked in syndrome. He had been frozen stiff for 2 years from the trauma he had suffered. So we were able to get him walking and moving, and it was very miraculous as far as his recovery. So what I did is I started looking at, well, who else has this? And
Mhm.
I started looking at my general patient population, and turns out we all do have a mild form of PTSD, or a mild form, at least, of what I called at the time life accumulation stress disorder. And so we all, unless we deal with it as it happens, it actually has an impact on our body. So we actually did a clinical study with, of all companies, 3M. I'm in Minnesota here. So we did one of the PhDs at 3M, and I did a clinical study, and we found all of these people are walking around with these stress reactions. And so what happens is
Interesting.
people have either a really large big stress, and they can have a physical reaction, or they have small multiple stresses every day, and it adds up to the same thing. So one of the big consequences of chronic stress, we all know that you can get an ulcer, which is basically a hole in your gut. You can get leaky gut, which is little pin-sized holes in your gut from stress. But also what happens is our cells, which are supposed to receive nutrients, receive oxygen, receive glucose for energy, receive fats, our cells can fold over on themselves, blocking the receptors. So just like a frightened child will curl up in a ball, our cells do that. And so even if you're eating the perfect diet, if you're stressed about the diet, if you're in a stressful relationship, you're blocking those nutrients from coming into the cells. So this is why when we focus on stress management, and reversing some of the reflexive components of stress, we see miraculous changes, because now how God equipped us to handle the stressors of this life, their systems start working better. And I'll say this, I feel it was put on my heart years and years ago. Up on my wall, I've got a mission statement where it says to become a worldwide agent of change in the fields of healthcare and human potential. I had no idea why I wrote that on the wall. We were a small clinic in Minnesota. And then all of a sudden, things started building, and people were coming from all over the United States, Canada, a couple different countries. And then COVID happened. And I stood up against some of the things that I'll call tyranny, or things I didn't agree with. We'll say that. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I started getting a little bit more of a national voice. And all of a sudden I started getting a little attention. And now I believe that we are going to have a new healthcare system in the United States, I believe that's going to spill over into Canada, Mexico, and even the rest of the world. Because there are other countries in Europe that I model some of the things
Mhm.
as far as what we're doing. Europe is ahead of us when it comes to our food supply and what
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
banned, really. So they're
Yeah.
doing a good job there in some
That
places.
it's so exciting, and what you said about the US having major changes,
Hmm.
I don't think it could come a minute too soon. On that note, it's time for a really quick break, and we actually have one of our partners here that I'm going to highlight is our guys at griddownchowdown.com. They are actually supplying super high quality freeze dried grass fed grass finished beef, and this is what it looks like. I'm gonna play a little ad here because they actually are gonna talk to the farmer, and you're gonna see who is providing your beef when you buy this. So hang out for just a second, guys. We're gonna show you this, and then we'll be right back. And I will put up the QR code so that you can order if you want to do that. And there is a subscription model for people who want to just spend a little bit every month and just get the packages coming in monthly so that you can either use it to cook or stockpile. Here we go.
This is my brother, and I'm Nace, and we're at the Grid Down Chowdown, and this is Larry, who is a local rancher that we've partnered with. Now, Larry, you've been ranching for over 4 generations, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm 3rd generation, my son's 4th generation, and I've got some grandkids that are 5th generation.
Man, that's
We've
awesome.
been here for quite a while, yeah.
All right, now, Larry, your cattle is grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised, just like God intended them to be.
Yes, because I want to know what's in that animal,
Right.
what it's been fed, and so the only way to do that is for us to keep it all natural, just like God has done it for years and years and years, thousands of years.
How has partnering up with us helped you and your ranch?
Well, it's allowed us to develop a market that we didn't have before, one that can get directly to the consumer, and that's great.
And just remember, more importantly, with every package that you buy, we put a salvation track in there. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for allowing us to do what we believe that God has us here to do. And just remember, God loves you. He really does.
Amen.
Okay, here's our QR code. I love those cows. They're so cute, aren't they? They're so sweet. And listen, I've met these guys, and I've had them on the show. I've seen them down in Oklahoma. Actually, last time I saw them, they gave me my beef here. And these are when you buy from this company, everybody, you're supporting that farmer
Hmm.
and those guys that you saw in the video. You're not supporting some, corporate Wall Street, BlackRock entity. You are literally supporting families in Oklahoma and the Midwest and throughout that part of the country. So it's just fantastic. And I'm really grateful that we're able to partner with them. I see people are scanning the QR code here. Make sure that you put in promo code Mary Grace when you do that. And like I said, they have a subscription. They have discounts for bulk ordering. There's all kinds of ways that you can save and prepare for the future, but also take care of your family now. And it's pretty special, very easy to use the product. It's not jerky. It's not dehydrated. It's freeze dried. So when you reconstitute this beef, it's like getting a fresh pound of ground beef. That's what it is. And you can make whatever you want with it, burgers, tacos, etc. And I know you've tried it too, Dr. Troy. So
Yeah.
you're like nodding your head.
Yeah.
It's very special what they're doing, and they have a great story. So we'll get them back on the show. I'm going to move this off, and we're going to talk again about what's going on in the world right now in the space of healthcare. And then I want to pivot to the immediate alarm, which is viruses. It seems like we get one every 4 years, coincidentally. And so let's get back to this. And by the way, if you want to contact Dr. Troy through his office, you can go right here to the QR code, officialsynapse.com. He's going to take some questions here in a few minutes. And if you are on Rumble, we prioritize the questions from Rumble Rants. If you are on Facebook, the paid subscribers on Facebook get priority with your questions. That doesn't mean we won't take other questions, but we give priority to those. So get those questions ready, and we will jump over to that in just a few minutes here. All right. So you were talking about the system, the healthcare system, and things that you envision. And the beautiful thing about this is that you get, you said Jesus is your CEO. And so your motivation and your foundation is very different from a lot of the traditional, wouldn't even say traditional, standard uh, medical settings that we see today, especially when it comes to the way the insurance works and the way that doctors make decisions. So can you talk just a little bit more about that and where you see things going with our
Yeah,
nation?
absolutely. I do think we're going to not change much when it comes to our emergency medicine. I still think there's going to be a need for our traditional system because people will have disease where they need surgeries, they need a lot of that
Yeah.
help, but there's going to be a different first line therapy. And I'm just going to say this until like we can't use a system like Canada's system. I grew up in Canada. We can't have a national healthcare system yet because it would bankrupt our entire nation right now because we're so sick. So we have to budget like we would taking care of our house. We have to budget to get our health back. And then there needs to be a certain percentage of us, 30%, that are back on top, that then we can start to look at having support and subsidizing and making things cheaper or taxing things that make us sick, like they did with cigarettes and things like that. So there's going to be a shift where people start budgeting and start making different choices when it comes to their food and what they put in their body and what they put in their mind. Number two, when you come from a Christ consciousness, which means how we were born under God, how we're made in His image, it changes a lot of other things as far as what we decide to do. Again, when we identify a breakdown in communication, we'll actually use biblical principles as the exercise when it comes to surrender, forgiveness. I've seen lack of forgiveness block an entire healing, where we can measure it with the blood work. They have arthritic pain in their joints. We know what to do. We've used a protocol to change their diet and help them. And it's not until they learn to forgive that the healing occurs. So when you know that,
Wow.
there's so much more you can do proactively. It's not going to cost an arm and leg when you start to apply some of these principles. And a lot of the people that we onboard as patients, really, we're teaching them. So it's education about what's working with your body,
Mhm.
what's not working, why did this happen, and what's the root cause, so you can make good decisions moving forward. So really, my job is to help equip people with the knowledge of how to address their health concerns and how to stay proactively healthy so that you don't need doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about my conversations with you, because I'm now a patient at Synapse, and I have been having some struggles, which I talked about on the last conversation that we had here on the show. I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition, and I feel like we haven't even really tapped into the depths of what's going on. But
Yeah.
there's a ways to go. But one of the things that I really appreciate about conversations with you is that there's no judgment. Like I don't feel like I'm in trouble
No.
for decisions that I've made, right? For things that I've done or not done or continue to do. And it's just there's a very nurturing, but not enabling. It's not
Right.
enabling. It's just, okay, here's the facts and here's where you are. And here's, so we get the empirical evidence, but it's just, I feel empowered to make decisions because there's a reason and a logic behind
Yeah.
it. And you're not telling me, well, we can't do this because insurance doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's a big deal, right? And one of the things that I've always said about the insurance situation is that if people treated their bodies like they treat their car, they would be spending their own money on routine maintenance and even major repairs.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be depending on the insurance company to take care of their bodies. Because if you call your insurance company and say, "Hey, I need new tires," the insurance company's going to laugh at you. They're going to be like, did somebody cut your tires? Did you run over like a bed of nails? What do you like? Was it vandalized? Did somebody steal your
Yeah.
tires? We would cover that. But if you're saying that you drove your car 40,000 miles and you've got cupping on your tires, you got to go buy tires.
Yeah.
And as as owners of our bodies, we don't have that mindset. We have the mindset of, well, insurance covers this drug, so I'm going to put this drug in my car, in my body. And I'll take it another step, which is like, imagine if the insurance company said, well, you know what? We'll cover a bottle of spring water. Go ahead and put that in your gas tank because we'll cover that. What happens if you put water in your gas tank? Bad news,
Yeah.
right? But the insurance covered it. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and do it,
It's a good analogy.
right? So if they say we'll cover this pill, this prescription, then you're like, oh, well, then I'm going to take that. And then what happens? You've
Yep.
seen the results of all this medication. Does it mean that people never benefit from prescriptions? Not
No.
necessarily.
Right.
But it's the insurance piece. Why is the insurance company dictating the decisions
Yeah.
people make about their bodies and their health, right?
That's right. So we're not against medications. We are against the improper use of medications, and they should be second and third line of healthcare recommendations. To use your example, autoimmune Hashimoto's, there are 8 causes for that. So to start to knock down all 8, we just look at things, and instead of saying, I had one of my patients recently say this. They have a very debilitating disorder. They're bedridden. They have general anxiety disorder, OCD, Lyme, and they have about 6 more diagnoses. And they saw an expert, and the expert is very good. I refer to this expert all the time and use the knowledge of this expert, but he's medically trained. So he goes off of what does PubMed say and then puts a protocol. And she said, what I like is you connect the dots to how I'm feeling and then show me what it is that's causing that. And so your protocol is what my body's saying. And so that's kind of how we lead, at least here at the clinic. Instead of saying the science says this, we say your body is telling us this. And so it's very, very different. The information is telling us this. Now we need to course correct. So there is no judgment. In fact, we make it very, very clear that we don't want you to go into self-condemnation for choices, because we are all so imperfect that we're walking this imperfect journey together. It's miraculous we're not more dysfunctional than we are. We're exposed to so many things that just wreak havoc on our body, and yet we are still pushing through. It is very miraculous. So
Yeah.
we always focus on what's really working well, with a lot of people too. And so anyone with autoimmune, they've been through stuff. End of story.
Right, right. And I think one of the things that comes to mind too is there's a phrase called neuroplasticity,
Yes.
right? And for some reason that just popped into my head because I know that, and what that means is that we're more capable of change than people realize.
Yes.
There's a common belief that people can't change, and that you get locked into your ways, and that your body gets on, or your mind gets on a certain track, and you can't actually grow the brain or grow your understanding and knowledge. And that actually has been proven otherwise. I think Dr. Carolyn Leaf has done a lot of work in that area. But for me, for example, when I was coming of age in the late 70s and early 80s, all the rage was fat-free, low
Yes.
fat.
Yeah.
And that's when all the frankenfoods became de rigueur. The Snackwells, everybody knows about
Yeah.
Snackwells if you're of a certain age. And that was all through my 20s and 30s. There was just this focus on really carb heavy, in many cases, ultra processed carbs
Yep.
and low fat. And I know that did damage to my body. I mean, during the most pivotal years of a
Yeah.
woman's life, all of my hormonal systems were being attacked by these things. And, yeah, I get kind of angry when I think about that
Yeah.
because I thought I was doing the right thing,
Yep.
but I'm just coming to terms with the fact that, like you said, there is healing and there is redemption in spite of the decisions that we made. Especially, we made a lot of those decisions out of ignorance and what we really thought was the best thing at the time. And that's really key for me is I was working with the tools and information that I had,
Yeah.
and I was believing and trusting in experts. I mean, I was told all of these things by a dietitian.
Yep. That's why two things with that, because you
Yeah.
nailed some gems there, because you are not alone with what you just said, number one. Number two, it's also why the Bible says God knows your heart, because
Mm,
he knows your intent. Your intent was to be better. Your intent was to be
yeah.
healthier. You just got bad information. And then I got in trouble. I wrote a book 25 years ago, and I quoted in that book a quote from Napoleon, who said, at the gates of heaven, you doctors will have more to answer for than even us generals. And so
Mm,
I got a lot of heat and a lot of flack for that back then, but it's true. A lot of
yeah.
doctors, we don't put God first. We put our own ego first, and we make mistakes. A lot of the science of the 80s and 90s was wrong. That's been true across history. Now, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you throw out everything with science, but they got it wrong. Turns out we need fat for hormones. Turns out we need fat for good brain. We need fat for anti-inflammatory effects. So that's also going to be true with the science of today. That's why you run it through the filter of faith first, and then put it through the scientific principles, if you will, and truth will always be truth. And so it'll always
Yeah.
come out that way. And so that's why you don't judge anything, because I never know how people are going to respond to a protocol we put them on. And I say the same thing every time. Just tell me if you feel better, worse, or the same. We don't judge anything. We just want to
Mhm.
carefully observe. And then that's going to tell us the path to health and
Mhm.
success.
Mhm.
And it's
Uh,
different. We have
yeah.
over 15,000 patients. I've never done the exact same thing twice.
And it's so good that you say that because, again, when you go into some of these more, standard settings that people have become accustomed to through the big, industry, uh, you kind of feel like you're in trouble if what they told you to do isn't working. And so there's this kind of adversarial relationship, and, it's like you feel like you're in the principal's office. And, I mean, I've felt that way before. Even when I like, when I took to
Yeah.
my dad to the doctor last week, I was like, I felt like we were both in trouble, and and we were being scolded, and the irony of it is, my dad has lost over 20 pounds through just dietary change, and the doctor that was scolding us was, visibly inflamed and overweight and metabolically not balanced at
Yeah.
all, and I'm trying to be nice. I mean, the way my dad phrased it was not politically correct at all.
I
But
like
but
your dad.
he was I'll tell you off camera what he
Yeah.
said. But anyway, I was like, so even my dad gets it, right? That this is the guy who's telling me how to have an optimal lifestyle. I,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't, I'm not buying it. And we see that so much in the system nowadays because, we're looking at people who are not healthy telling us how to get healthy. And before we go to a commercial break, I want to address one of the comments on Rumble. Fiddlenut said, I went to the ER and they said everything is okay with me. No. And so I want to encourage you and anybody out there who's in that situation, get in touch with Dr. Troy and his team. They do a discovery call that's no charge to you. And so, they'll take some information, basic questions, and then if you feel like you want to go forward, they'll set up a consultation with the doctor. So the discovery call, there's no charge, and then there's a quick, like a consultation, just so that you can really get a determination of how you might go forward. And the doctor sets aside a good amount of time to talk to you and to go through. And there's a really in-depth questionnaire. It's so different from what you've experienced, especially in a situation like that. So please make sure you contact them. You have nothing to lose. I mean, it's a discovery call. So their number there is 651-209-9906, 651-209-9906. The website is officialsynapse.com. It's official, SYNAPSE. And just make sure you tell them that Mary Grace sent you. Now we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to feature our friend Mike Lindell over at MyPillow. Speaking of breakthrough, like this guy has pushed the envelope on so many things. He started with just a pillow, and now he has everything. And for all of you who are getting kids back into school, whether it's a dorm room, an apartment, just forget about those big box stores. Just go to mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace. Everything you need is there: sheets, towels, blankets, mattress toppers, all the stuff that you would buy at those other stores and fighting the crowds. Just, you can order it right from MyPillow. It comes to your house. You can wash it all, pack it up, take it with you, drop your kid off, and know that they have everything they need and that it's the best quality, and you're supporting an American company. So pay attention here. Look at the specials. Promo code Mary Grace. We'll be right back.
Listen, we're finally bringing the most requested offer ever. Get the queen size premium MyPillow, now only $19.98. MyPillow is made with patented adjustable fill. It adjusts to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. It helps keep your neck aligned and holds its shape all night long so you get the best sleep of your life. But that's not all. Get our 6-piece kitchen or bath towel sets, only $25. Our brand new mattress topper as low as $69.98. Get our famous MyPillow bed sheets for as low as $25, and so much more. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get huge discounts on all MyPillow products, including the premium queen size MyPillow, only $19.98. That's the lowest price ever. Don't delay, order today. From all of us here at MyPillow, thanks America!
Okay, I love him. And I want to say one thing about if you order anything for your kid's dorm room or apartment, you're not going to see that stuff again. I just want you to know that. It's going to enter the vortex of dorm life. And so you don't want to spend too much on it. And his prices are so good. When you use promo code Mary Grace, you don't have to worry. Don't go and buy the crazy expensive bedding and towels. You're not going to see it again. And if you do, it's not going to be recognizable, because like doing laundry is not really a thing. Just FYI, if you're new at this, somebody needs to hear that. So don't break the bank. Go to mypillow.com, use promo code Mary Grace. All right, let's come back to our conversation. I have Dr. Troy Spurrill with me from Synapse Center for Health and Healing, and he's helped so many people, and he has an incredible vision for healthcare, for true wellness in our country and beyond. And so this is very exciting. I want to get on the track of talking quickly about viruses and preventive care. The 4-year virus cycle is upon us, and that means that the entities that were engaging in this kind of chicanery 4 years ago are back at it, and they're trying to scare you. And there's a monkeypox that is being thrown around, and apparently it's more viral than ever.
Yes. Yeah.
And so again, you talked about fear, and you talked about how that can actually contribute to sickness. Before we went on air, you were saying that, it's not that difficult, and viruses kind of, they're different, but kind of the same. Talk to us about preparing and being proactive so that you don't have to walk in fear with any of these things that get thrown at us.
Yeah. So the way to look at it is go back in history during the Spanish flu of 1918, during the bubonic plague, all these different times in history, things spread quite a bit. But there was also groups of people who were affected and infected who did fine. So why is it that we don't study and research those people and what was good about them? Well, turns out we have, to a certain degree, done that, and we just don't implement that, mostly because the solutions are very, very cost effective. The solutions don't make a lot of money. And so right now, I'm just going to say with the MPOX and what's been released with the World Health Organization, um, they're recommending a certain treatment, which we all know what that is. It was similar to before, and the known measured side effects of that treatment are more damaging than the actual
Yeah.
disorder itself. So that's number one. Number two, when you again put things through the filter of how God made us, our immune system is equipped to handle viruses. That's why we get it once, they tend to go dormant. So things like cold sores, that's a herpes virus, they come out during stress. So again,
Okay.
biblical principle, we're not meant to fear anything but God, being disobedient to God. That's it. So fearful of God is and not being obedient. So reducing our overall stress allows for our immune system to manage the viruses that are out there. So the novel viruses, first time we're exposed, our immune system has to learn quickly. So there are certain things that you can do to help with that. So in the same context as far as restoring communication, what can you do to restore communication? Well, we know vitamin D is the main hormone, which comes from cholesterol, fat. Vitamin D is the main hormone that feeds the part of our immune system that manages our response. So very important for communication. So make sure your vitamin D is high. For this virus and all viruses, I have a protocol as well that I can just send you. If you do go to our website and you type in Discovery Call and you just want the protocol, just put MPOX on there, and I'll know it came from Mary Grace, and I'll send that to anyone who's listening here as far as what the
Okay.
protocol is. So
And
people.
that's officialsynapse.com,
Yep.
officialsynapse.com.
And my protocol is simple. It basically makes sure your vitamin D is good, and it increases the cellular communication response. So we have these things called glycoproteins. They're kind of like antennas on the outside of our cells. A lot of people will know, like D-mannose has been used to help with UTIs, and so
Yep.
D-mannose is a glycoprotein. All it does is it helps to establish a good communication with your immune system response. So we see that when we increase our glycoproteins on the outside of the cell, it increases the intracellular response, which most intracellular pathogens are viruses and parasites. So your immune system activates to kick them out. Now, things like HIV and COVID and Lyme disease downregulate our memory T cells. Well, glycoproteins upregulate your memory T cells. So it actually helps a lot of people who have long haul symptoms and a lot of people who have chronic fatigue scenarios from viral issues all do better by upregulating the communication process. So glycoproteins is our primary approach. I'll send you our protocol for anyone who wants it, but it's been working really, really well for a lot of people who are chronically ill from actual true viral infections. So anything that's like this that's being put out by the World Health Organization, it's the same mechanism. You just want to make sure your intracellular mechanisms are working. Number one, stay hydrated. We can all drink clean water.
Mm-hmm.
Two, make sure your vitamin D is good. Some people also think that or need zinc as an actual scenario as well. So zinc is one of those things inside the cell that needs to be upregulated for a lot of people. That's why a lot of people who took zinc along with HCQ in the early years did well fighting off some of the infections that we saw in 2020.
I I'm thinking about this. I'm I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm looking at the comments, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because there was a recent story that came out that there and I'm trying to be careful because we're streaming on YouTube, but there was a woman who was in charge of taking down accounts that were saying
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying, and
Yep.
you know, she actually passed away
Yeah.
from the C word. And I don't, I mean, we don't know her medical history or anything like that, but it's the irony, I don't think, is lost on anybody of what's going on here. And we're seeing so many people succumbing and developing issues that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I do know is that in my listener group, I'm sure that we have people who took interventions and took part in procedures and medications that they might not have wanted to, or they made the decision and now they regret it. And so if they were to contact you, would you have some solutions that might
Yeah.
help them if they're experiencing symptoms? And everybody, I hope you know what I'm talking about, because I think we all know somebody, or maybe ourselves, who made a decision to do certain things, either because of fear or because of pressure or because of just not knowing and
Yeah.
thinking that it was the best thing to do. And there's no judgment if you did that. Or even if you got sick and you're still carrying a lot of the aftermath of that. And and you and I have talked, I think a lot of my issues have to do with the immense stress that came about when I was sick a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and then my dad got sick. I mean, it was an incredibly stressful time. So, and that was viral. And so if somebody feels like they're in that place, could they contact you?
Absolutely. There are different paths. So some people just need to do a protocol. Some people need a little more guidance. I hired one of the top PAs in the country who worked with frontline doctors to develop a very specific protocol. So she is brilliant. We do have interviews and media on our website for people as well. And I saw something pop up. It was a comment from Allison. Actually, there's two there. I want to answer that actually, because it's good for people to hear this. She said, "I thought mpox was not airborne; that it was contracted through direct contact." And that's exactly right. So people need to know it's
Yeah.
an exchange of fluids that gets it. Which certain populations, men more than women, will get it when we're talking about mpox. Other viruses
Mhm.
might be airborne, like COVID was, but for mpox, that is fluid. And so there are different populations, men with men, that are higher risk, and we see that. So that's very, very much true. But a lot of times too, people don't know that it doesn't just come from the actual virus exists from squirrels and from other animals as well. They find it in there. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. There has to be an open wound. There has to be some level of transference that way. So again, your risk is really low, even though the World Health Organization is coming out and saying global, whatever it is.
Issue, yeah.
Yep. And so that part of it's there. But my main point is all viruses can be addressed if you measure your immune system and equip it properly. And then I
Mhm.
saw one other one from Allison too, that was actually a really good comment. And
And
yeah,
this is on Facebook. I wanna remind people it looks like we're transitioning into the Q&A now. Put 3 Qs before your questions so that it's easier for us to find. And, I don't think Dr. Troy can see the Rumble, so if you have a question on Rumble, let us see that. Listen, we are always accepting, Rumble rants. That means that's a way that you can support the channel. Also, I wanna remind people, if you are liking this content right now on Rumble, I only see 2 thumbs up. Please go under the video, hit the thumbs up, because that helps push this up in the feed on Rumble so that more people can see this show right now and after the fact. Also, when you come back, leave a comment so that it pushes the show up in the feed. That is the case on every single one of our channels, especially on Facebook and Rumble. If you are a paid subscriber on Facebook and you have a question, your question does get priority, and we want to make sure that we get that question in. All right. So question that Allison had, let me see if we can find
I've got
this.
it here because this
Okay.
one's really important. She says, "Have these doctors ever thought they would get more patients if they didn't charge so much?" So I want to address that because this is actually this is a really important conversation to have. The first thing I want to speak to on that is the functional medicine doctors that are doing this. Number one, I don't need more patients. I was in a small little room by myself with a waiting list practice. I was set for life. But God put it on my heart to open up and teach functional medicine. I have 15,000 patients. I am I'm working more now than I ever have in my life to teach other doctors and other people around the country.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, our fees in functional medicine are a fraction of healthcare fees. So it still might be out of pocket a lot for some people, but I have a perfect example. One of my patients was on 17 medications, was going to Mayo Clinic. Her annual expense to the healthcare system was $110,000. Now, insurance was covering 80% of that, so she still was spending $20,000 a year in her healthcare. She spent about $6,000 with us out of pocket for 1 year, and then got off of all of her medications except for one, and was able to maintain her health for $500 to $1,500 a year afterwards. A case study we put together.
Wow.
We saved the healthcare system $114,000 annually for the rest of her life. So that's the savings that occurs. Our bills are a fraction of what actually gets charged. And if you say, well, insurance is paying for it, well, who's paying for the insurance? Has everyone noticed that their insurance rates have gone up over the years? What used to cost $200 for a family now costs $600, $800, or $1,200. So that's point number two. Point number three, it's a broken system. I tried to hire a top oncologist who came to me. He referred a patient, and a cancer patient with actual peripheral neuropathy, and system was failing, and we were able to help her. We actually got her walking again. He said, "This is what I got into healthcare for." And he came and he said, "I want to work for you." I said, "Great." And I showed him what his starting salary would be. And at that time, it was $40,000 a year. And he said, "I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I make $800,000 a year as an oncologist. There's no way I could make that swing. I'll have to do it in my retirement." And so that's a big part of it. So there's not a lot of money making being made by the functional medicine practitioners. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is, because I do recognize when I first started, I was just seeing people who had put money aside or had money aside. So I started a nonprofit organization. The nonprofit will pay for people who need the treatment but can't afford the treatment.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I want Allison, and this is nothing, I don't want you to hear this as harsh, Allison, but I need you to change your mindset so that you're supporting people who are fighting for the truth, who are charging less, but trying to get people better. So we're teaching doctors how to be there for patients through the Christ consciousness, through the filter of science, and have a heart with a brain. And so that you want to pay them at least what the people in the other fields are making, and they're not there yet. So just know that we've tried to offset that as best we could with the nonprofit, and all of us spend extra hours outside of our normal 60-hour weeks helping the nonprofit. So you have people who are fighting to help pay for people who can't afford the care. So eventually, when we change the healthcare system, that'll change completely. But I love the fact, I love your boldness, Allison, with that question. It is an elite question, and the answer needed to be heard by a lot of people. So I appreciate you, Allison, for putting that out there.
Thank you for explaining that. I think people do misunderstand when they call an office like yours and do the consultation and then they're presented with the whatever package it is that you might recommend, whatever course of protocol. And I think that it does at first feel a little bit like sticker shock because we've gotten so conditioned,
Yeah.
especially if we have a job where they pulled the insurance premiums out of your paycheck. People aren't used to writing a check or sending a payment for those things, even though we are paying for them. And like you said, people are paying more because just through health insurance premiums and deductibles. And I wanted to just throw this out here for people to get a comparison. You said that this one patient who had been going to a very big name clinic had been spending over $20,000 a year out of pocket.
Yeah.
And by the time you got them through the protocol and they were doing yearly maintenance, it was down to about $1,500 a year. I want to throw some numbers out here for you guys. Now, don't glaze over. I'm giving you some simple numbers. So that comes to $125 a month if your protocol is $1,500 a year. And I want you to think about some of that number, and think about some of the things that you're paying for monthly. Let's start with your cell phone. What is your cell phone bill? Write that down. Okay, now let's talk about if you're paying for any kind of streaming or TV or internet, all of that for getting information into your home. Write that number down. Now let's talk about groceries. Write that number down. Let's talk about extras, coffees, snacks, drive-throughs, things like that. What is that number? Be honest with yourself, because we measure what we treasure. And I think that if you really are honest with yourself and you follow where you're spending that money, you'll find that you have the money. It's just that you haven't begun to treasure yet how to prioritize that money or where to allocate it.
Yep.
Right?
That is very well said, because
Okay.
when we actually do our budget, and this is what we teach our patients, when you do a budget, look at all the different categories and then just right beside it, does this help or hinder your health? And a lot of things we spend money on, people will actually start to see that they're detractors for their overall health. Some of them are good. You want to keep endorsing those. You want to keep backing those. So that's very well said. That's actually, I know you haven't even heard that class of ours, but you could teach it.
Oh, thank you. So thank you. I appreciate it. Now let's get back to a couple of questions. I'm going to take a Rumble question. Yes, and Millie on Rumble is pointing out that for people to look at the weekly amount you spend on Charbucks or any other drive-through caffeine dispenser. That's a big one. Okay.
Yep.
Now let's go to Maritak. Maritak has a question. I think this is our first question. Okay. Yes. My husband is 61, healthy, no meds, non-smoker, non-drinker, had a gallbladder attack. They found lung nodules and an enlarged liver. We've changed our diet according to what I researched. And then something happened with the rest of your question, Maritak. Sorry. Are you asking if Dr. Spurrill's clinic could help him? That's what I'm assuming you're asking. We changed our diet. We didn't get the rest of your question. Can you come back and finish that question? We'll move on to another one. Apologies, Dr. Spurrill. Let's go to another one. Eileen in Facebook has a question. Do you want to read that question out for us? Do you see it?
Let me get to
about Hep C.
I see one from her. Is there a safe way to taper off? Oh, Eileen's got a few questions here. I'm going to read the two I see. Is there a natural remedy for neuropathy, pain in your feet? The answer is yes. So there's a lot of different causes for neuropathy. Number one, you have to make sure blood sugar regulation is being managed. Number two, because blood sugar dysregulation, diabetes, one of the main symptoms is neuropathy. Number two, it could be a problem with too much or not enough B6. B6 primarily is made and delivered via our gut, so digestive problems. Number 3, there is IV alpha lipoic acid that's used in the treatment without addressing anything else, but I like to get to the root cause. What set up the neuropathy? Number 4 is blood flow issues, not enough oxygen or sugar, like we said before, from cardiovascular issues. So if it's in both feet versus one, addressing what's causing the blood flow. And that could be anything from pelvic dysfunction. It can be what's called spondylolisthesis in the back where the bottom bone slides forward from sitting too much. It can be lymph issues from kidney scenarios. So there are a lot of factors, but there are natural ways to help reduce the pain of neuropathy, but you have to find the root cause. That was just a handful of them that can be addressed. Also, this is a sneaky one because I just ran into this with a patient who had debilitating neuropathy that was waking them up at night, developed into restless leg syndrome. It ended up being mold toxicity coming from their house. So
Wow.
some people have a genetic sequencing called HLA-DB where they can't detox mold properly. And so even if it's not the black dangerous mold and just regular mold from water damage, it can actually cause the problems of neuropathy. So getting to the root cause is very, very important. And that's a perfect example. And then she had, is there a safe way to taper off blood pressure medicine? And then she named the medication. And the answer is yes, there is. I strongly urge you to work with your doctor or a doctor. We have a protocol established to get people off of the blood pressure medication. There's 3 things that cause blood pressure to rise. That's the nervous system. So stress or a distress affecting the brain can raise the blood pressure. Stiffening of the arteries themselves and it's not from too much cholesterol, but it's from something causing the cholesterol reaction to stiffen it, or a deficiency in fats. You talked about it earlier, but essential fatty acids is what makes our arteries all fluid. And then third is anything that can cause damage to the inside of the arteries. It's called the endothelial lining. This can be clotting disorders. This can be spike protein issues. This can be problems with diet again, or issues with dehydration can also cause it. So there's only 3 causes. You just have to figure it out with that. We are well over 98% with our patient population at getting them off of blood pressure. Only a few scenarios where we tell our patients to stay on it because damage has been done, and it's easier to regulate with the blood pressure as we continue to work on the root cause. Sometimes the root cause can't be changed because the damage is done.
Okay, that's good to know. And I want to jump to Terry Hall's question. Actually, let's go back to Meritac, and then we'll jump to Terry Hall. And Eileen, if we have time, we'll come back to your additional question. But Eileen, it sounds like it would really be good for you to contact Dr. Troy's clinic and set up a consultation for you and your husband. And that is officialsynapse.com, officialsynapse.com. Just tell them you heard about it on Mary Grace's show. Okay. Let's see. So Meritac is finishing the question. So let's go back up to the question. It's husband is 61, healthy, no meds, no smoker, no drinking, gallbladder attack. They found lung nodules, enlarged liver, changed our diet. And we'd probably like to know more about that. But also, CT scan showed nothing to be concerned about. What can we do for him? He's scheduled for a colonoscopy in September.
Okay, so great question, because they know something's wrong, but the serious stuff has been ruled out. So that's good that there isn't a disease process, but something's going on there. So with lung nodules, you know that there's been some level of breach in the lung barrier. So something is being breathed in that's not being handled properly. So we see that primarily with mold again. So if there's mold spores in the house, that can cause that whole scenario. It causes a condition called chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS. And so it's special lab work that gets ordered. It's not the traditional standard lab work because it doesn't raise a lot of the traditional markers. It also could be something like mycoplasma. Mycoplasma you can get by digging in the soil and stuff, and it can get in the lungs, which then can affect the liver that way. We also see this with autoimmune Hashimoto's. Can also trigger up that same response. We see this with guys with non-alcoholic fatty liver or with sleep disorders, sleep apnea, upper airway resistance syndrome. And to our point earlier, Stanford University has diagnosed 102 different sleep disorders, and doctors generally only check 6 to 8 because that's what insurance covers. So anytime we see a little breakdown with lung stuff, I always look at sleep disorders, because the number one hormone in your body that protects the lungs is melatonin. Melatonin is the deep sleep hormone, and that gets altered from stress, infection, and inflammation. So the short version of that story is, where is there stress? And a sleep disorder counts as stress, not just mental life stress. Where is there a potential infection? Mycoplasma, mold, Lyme are a couple. And where's their inflammation? Is it diet? They're checking the colon. That's great. If nothing shows up, it doesn't mean there's nothing there. It just means it's not a disease process, because the nutritional system is going to be looking to validate a diagnosis code of disease to get paid. So there can be something that's low level, like candida, fungus, dysbiosis, SIBO, that's causing the same scenario. It won't kill you, but it'll cause these types of issues. And again, what's funny is the same scenario to treat some of these viruses. The glycoproteins can help restore your bile acids to reduce the actual gallbladder attacks. So a lot of times you have to support the bile system. And one of the weird things, I'm going to say this too, just because it popped in my head, glyphosate, which is in Roundup, has the potential of actually interfering that mechanism to cause that problem as well in certain genetic populations. So investigating, getting to the root cause is kind of important.
And she said that he used to do land scraping.
So mycoplasma and glyphosate would be two that I would look
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
And I do want to say that on my superfood site, which is if you go, just send me an email, Maritac, info@marygracemedia.com. I'll send you a link with a coupon code. There is a product that our superfoods company makes that actually has been clinically proven to pull that glyphosate out of your body. But I would also recommend highly that you schedule a consultation with Dr. Troy, because he gave you a lot of scenarios, and that could be one of them, but it could be something else. And we would hate for you to miss it, and for your husband to go through a lot of unnecessary procedures and interventions without actually knowing the root cause. So please do contact them. It's a free discovery call when you contact them, and then you'll have a better idea if you want to go forward with his team. And that's officialsynapse.com. Okay, I'm going to take, depending on your time, Dr. Troy, we've got a ton of questions. This always happens. Guys, listen, get here earlier. Get here earlier. We started at 10 o'clock. So
I'm good on time. I love answering these. These are really good questions.
Okay. Allison also qualified. She said, I did not make that comment with a bad heart. It's just very expensive. And we do get that, Allison, but hopefully what I've been saying about the numbers helps you get perspective, because it does seem like really expensive at the first, because we're just not used to this model. And we've gotten accustomed to and conditioned to paying out of pocket for a lot of other things, like car insurance. How much is your car insurance? My car insurance is more than $120 a month, I'll tell you that. And I still have to buy tires, and I still have to pay for the oil change out of pocket.
Yeah.
So, with a car, you're spending sometimes thousands a year to keep that car in good running order, especially if you don't want to turn it in and buy a new one. Well, I can't turn my body in and buy a new one. So I want to spend that money on my health, right? Or I'd rather spend it on my health than my car. But I love my car, so I'll keep it maintained. I don't want to buy a new one. Same thing with my body. Okay, I hope that helps. Now, we do have a question from Terry, and I want to get to this one, and I'm going to use some code here just because of where we are on different platforms. So does there's two different interventions that have been floated out in the past few years, both of which got doctors and pharmacists put on the naughty list. And one of them sometimes is given to horses, and the other one is one that became very popular. They actually made it almost impossible to get. Starts with an H, ends with a Q. Uh,
And we
so
use it to treat lupus. So it's
yeah,
been used for
crazy.
years and
Yeah.
decades.
And also I know that it's been used to treat malaria, and it's even safe for pregnant women,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so can those be used to cure the mpox or keep you from getting it? Good question.
Okay, so great question. So the I'm going to use the lupus treatment as an example. That is what we call a zinc ionophore. So if you have enough zinc in your cells, this helps to push the zinc into the cell and help increase the immune response intracellularly. So the answer is potentially it can help with all viruses because it helps intracellular zinc status. Now, if those levels are good and you don't have the glycoproteins on the outside of the cell, then it's not going to be as effective. And we saw that for some people it was very effective, and for others it wasn't. So if you have a history where you know you used it during 2020 to 2023 for other infections, and it worked, then great, go ahead and use it. If you did use it and you didn't notice it had an impact, then you may be either zinc deficient or need the glycoprotein scenario. So that's kind of how you make sense of what's working, what's not working. And then there is actually an anti-inflammatory component to the horse one, and so there is a component where it'll help as well. So both of those will have at least a mild to moderate impact, but there are other things that you may need to put in play. There's zinc in particular, vitamin D, and then the glycoproteins. When you have all of
Mhm.
those scenarios going, you've got a well-oiled machine to help prevent any and all illness, regardless of age. And only the severe end-of-life immunocompromised who have no army to speak of will this not help. So
Okay.
good question.
And I confess, doctor, I was a little distracted when you talked about the glycoprotein.
Yeah.
Can you just define that again quickly for
So
us?
it's just like a cell signaling. So basically, think of an antenna on the outside of your cell. It's like a receiver. It's built with proteins and sugars. So
Okay.
basically, your immune system can see it kind of waving there, and it comes and activate. It'll draw the immune system towards that cell, and then when it activates the glycoprotein on the outside of the cell, it stimulates the inside of your cell's immune
Okay.
system response to kick out parasites and viruses, and then
Mhm.
your immune cells are right there waiting for them, your macrophages, the little Pac-Man cells. So it helps boost the part of your immune system that's been dampened by these other chronic infections like HIV and the spike protein infections. And it also helps the communication system for your immune system to actually address and take care of it. So it increases the number of immune cells and the communication from the outside to inside to get a lot of the hidden infections, parasites, viruses, and Lyme are just some examples.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so we've got another question. I'm going to jump back over to uh, Rumble. This is Kay Jurek. Is there any way to improve vision affected by Fuchs dystrophy and cataracts?
Um, Yeah, cataracts is very tough, but yeah, everything else you can help vision quite a bit by improving the lymph flow in the head. So every night when we get into deep sleep, our immune system called the glymphatic network gets activated. It cleans everything out. So fasting can help that. Digestive inflammation causes that to get worse. Sinus inflammation. There is a infection called Marcons that can cause problems here. You want to make sure your lymph system in the head is addressed and that your membranes are addressed. Now, a lot of times it will actually massage under the eyes and above the eyes, and you'll actually have tenderness there. Be careful, don't poke yourself in the eye, but you have tenderness there. when you're actually massaging around there, that's a sign there's too much lymph. And people
Okay.
have sensitivities. Coffee, certain foods can actually trigger it, and the sinuses can become problematic. So there's a lot you can do. Once it's gotten to the stage of macular degeneration, macular degeneration can be stopped and even reversed with antioxidants. But cataracts, we've had little to no success with cataracts, so we refer out to get those fixed, and then we work on restoring the immune system part of it. Get deep sleep, lots of water, hydration, and get the muscles of the head massage, and then clean it from the inside out, which really means a low inflammatory diet, and figure out what you're reacting to, either
Mhm.
from the environment or from our food sources.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We have a question now from Marcia on Facebook. What test is there for HLAB-D? She said she's not sure
Oh,
about the letters.
HLA-DB. So, okay, so if she's talking about if you're mold sensitive, there's a
Yes.
genetic test. So LabCorp does this. So you can ask your doctor for the LabCorp mold genetic mold test, which is the HLA. It'll either be HLA-DB or HLA-DR, and you can order that and see if you're genetically sensitive. Now, your doctor may not know how to do it, because you have to take the results of that and put it into a calculator, which you can find online. So if your doctor will order it, great. If they won't, if you just look up LabCorp. I'm just going to look it up real quick for you here. LabCorp HLA
Okay.
Yeah, so it's called, it's actually LabCorp code 167120, if that helps. And that's the HLA-DR test. And once you get the information, you plug it into a calculator, and you can find out if you have the genetics for the mold. And if you
What's that
do,
number again? I'll type it.
it's LabCorp test number 167120.
Test 1
67120.
120. Okay.
And these people will actually
167120.
walk into a church that has mold in the basement and start to get reactive. It can be anything from headaches to vision disturbances to sluggishness to aches and pains in their joints. That's one of the things that when we get more control over our healthcare system, we will start to look at moldy buildings and their influence on people's health, because 25% of the population has that gene.
Wow. Okay, we have a good question from Millie on Facebook. Millie is one of our long-term friends and listeners. And she's going through a lot of issues, but here's a question. Can sleep apnea be turned around? And can congestive heart failure be reversed from the sleep apnea? Or is that the real cause of enlarged heart/heart failure?
This is a great question. So sleep apnea is one of the causes of congestive heart failure. So just like we talked about the sleep disorders causing congestion around the eyes, the lymph system, when the heart has to push, it has to work harder, and then you don't actually clear the fluid around the heart. So congestive heart, they talk about how the ventricles don't contract the same. There's weakness. It's a burnt out muscle, and you've got to clear the system. And yes, you can correct sleep apnea. So there's a couple of scenarios there. There's a difference between central sleep apnea and obstructive. Obstructive is easier, where you actually work on weight loss and or restoring the tone of the muscles here in the airway. So if our muscles get too tight, or we have too much fat squeezing off the airway, then it starts to shrink, not enough oxygen at nighttime. CPAPs, all they do is force the airway open. But you can do the same thing by reducing the stress of the muscles back here, improving the function of the muscles here. The more we're on our cell phones, the more our head goes forward, the more likely you are to develop sleep disorders as well. So we're seeing an epidemic of sleep disorders. 80 to 90% of the patients that come into our clinic, we diagnose a sleep disorder with.
Wow.
And so it can be reversed. Diet and lifestyle, it takes a long time. Physical work, if there's tension in the jaw, mouth guards, sometimes medically, they will actually do surgeries to open up the airway and the tongue. We never have had to get to that point. But it's important to know that it is possible. There's only 50% compliance with CPAPs. And so it's important to actually try and work on the root cause stuff. Now, it can be challenging because it requires a lot of lifestyle changes and extra focus on restoring everything here
Mm.
to sleep. Then you work on the heart and the body, and you slowly retrain and re-educate the system. So we have many people who have that in their family history. That's in my family history. That is definitively what I would get if I wasn't taking care of myself.
Okay. Okay. Good question, Millie. Thank you. A quick question from Allison. This is a follow-up on those two medications that we talked about, specifically the horse medication. Should we be taking that one as a prophylactic, for example, on a weekly or monthly rotation? And I think part of the answer to that would be if you get his protocol, if you go to officialsynapse.com and ask for the protocol for the MPOX, some of that would be addressed. But I'm going to let you answer that.
Yeah, so the answer is yeah, if you take the vitamin D and the glycoproteins ongoing and or zinc for people who are zinc deficient, if you take those three ongoing, then you can do prophylactically weekly, biweekly, or monthly, depending on flares in your area, and it's very protective. So yeah, another great question, and yes, you can do that. And I like getting the foundational stuff there first, and that's how medication should work. Basically, they should be third line therapies where we restore the natural communication of how we were made first, as best possible from our own food, diet, lifestyle, and occasionally supplements. Restore that first, and then use the other meds intermittently like that when there's a flare or something like that. I
Okay.
would say definitely do that until November 5th. Just because we see during the flu season and different
Yeah.
seasons, things seem to change. And then after that, we'll see through the Christmas season what's needed.
Right. Very, very interesting timeline here. We're in virus season,
Yes, we
guys.
are.
It's virus season. So don't forget that. And remember, don't be scared, be prepared. Fear will definitely dampen your immune system. So just don't let the fear mongers on any side of the aisle get you in a state of panic. That's part of what they do. They do it for clicks. So be careful about that. Protect your mind, control your emotions. We've heard that from one of our guests before, and we want to remember that. Now, another quick question over here from Fiddlenut3. This is it's a two-part question. Okay, do you have to use HQ to get the zinc to absorb? And then, how do you get the right fat to absorb vitamin D?
So great question, because no, you don't have to use the HQ to get the zinc to absorb. If you have heightened stress, though, then that makes it harder for the zinc to be absorbed. That's why people who are more stressed are more immune compromised. So work on your stress, your deep sleep, and you'll absorb zinc properly. There's also natural zinc ionophores, which just means they help usher zinc into the cell. They're not as strong as the HQ, but an example is quercetin. Quercetin is a natural zinc ionophore, and so it can help push the cells, the zinc into the cells. So love that question. What was the second part of that question?
How do you get the right fats to absorb vitamin D? What is the
Oh,
recommended? Because it's a fat soluble
yeah,
vitamin,
it's
right?
fat soluble. You have to make sure your gallbladder and
Mhm.
bile system, because bile emulsifies fat, it breaks the fat down so you can absorb it. And so you want to avoid seed oils, and you want to consume good for you oils. And a real tricky one is you have to be hydrated. You have to have water to help with the fat absorption, because the bile can become sticky and congested if you're too
Mm.
dehydrated. And so,
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
it's very important that the blood flow is good so that your bilirubin and your liver don't get congested, so that you can actually make the bile in the liver,
Mhm.
store it in the gallbladder, and then you also have to make sure your
Okay.
bowels are moving. Constipation will dry
Mhm.
up your bile and also make you less likely to absorb the actual vitamin
Okay.
D. So good liver health. Caffeine, unfortunately, makes that a little worse. Dehydration makes that
Okay.
a little worse. So good hydration and good fats in the form of olive oil. I actually tell people, so some of my patients are professional PGA players, professional Olympic athletes, and so they get tested.
Oh,
So they can't take a lot of supplements, they can't take medications. So I was able to help one of my PGA players or patients just by having them do a teaspoon of olive oil 3 times a day, and their fat soluble vitamins went up.
and one thing about olive oil, I will say, let me say about seed oils. Seed oils are industrial waste.
Yeah.
And when Crisco, any kind of quote vegetable oil that is, especially if it says heart healthy on the bottle, I would run the other way. And it's going to be canola, sunflower, safflower, corn, cottonseed, rapeseed, any oleomargarines that
Yep.
are a concoction of different oils and fats. And then when you buy olive oil, you need to get a really high quality source of olive oil because unfortunately, most of the supermarket oils are cut with seed oils. They're mass produced.
Yep.
And that's what I've found. And so this is one instance in where you actually might want to go to a local grocer or cooking shop where they sell high quality olive oils. You're not consuming mass quantities, so it's going to be worth it to spend a little bit more to get a really high quality like Italian or Spanish or California olive oil that's not cut with other
Yep.
oils, right? That's
Agreed.
what you do. You're
Agreed.
kind of a connoisseur, right?
I'm a connoisseur. I have 20 different olive oils from around the world,
You could
Greek
teach
and
a class on
yep.
olive oil. Yeah.
Yes. I love it.
So so just keep that in mind, everybody. That's one area where you don't want to skimp. You don't really need to buy the huge bottle at the big box store to save $3. Spend a little more, get it in the glass bottle, cold pressed, that kind of thing. That's the extent of my expertise on olive oil. Okay. But do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, I want to answer to follow up on the gallbladder. If you don't have a gallbladder, it doesn't matter because your liver makes the bile. You just don't have a storage unit for the bile. So the fact that you lost your gallbladder is an indication there was already disease and dysfunction going on there. So you want to still apply these same principles, but you won't be able to regulate your fat soluble vitamins as well because of not having the gallbladder. But you still have the ability to make bile. So great question.
Awesome. Okay, now I have one more question. I did want to give a shout out to my Rumble listeners. We are over 200 live viewers, and I think that we are featured today on the live stream on Rumble. So that's very exciting. Thank you, Rumble, for featuring us. I do accept Rumble rants. So we do appreciate that. Anytime you are watching on Rumble and you want to help us to grow the channel and monetize the channel, you can do a Rumble rant. We do accept those. And then also on Facebook, we accept Facebook stars and we have a paid subscriber option on Facebook that we're going to be building up more and more. Okay, last question. Oh, I want to give you a comment and then I'll give a question. So we have a comment from Jeff Mitchell on X. Unfortunately, I can't respond to the comments on X, but I'm going to read this. Jeff says, Troy Spurrill is the real deal! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. And we think so too. So we're very happy to have him here. And thank you for that comment.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff says on Facebook, a different Jeff, are you able to heal PCOS? This runs in my husband's family and both my daughters have it. I'm sorry for your daughters, but I think you've come to the right place.
Yeah, PCOS is something that is, so for those who don't know, it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it's cysts that occur on the ovaries. And so, yes, there's a lot you can do with it. It takes a lot of time to get things right because there's a lot of variables. So a lot of times we end up with what's called insulin resistance. So insulin resistance will lead to metabolic syndrome. So if they're really far down that path, you have to treat the metabolic syndrome, the insulin resistance. It causes high testosterone in women, so you have to down-regulate the testosterone, and the cysts are forming because the cells on the ovaries are sensitive, and there's a problem with their estrogen balance there. So you have to do the three-part treatment of balancing the sugar, the insulin, the cortisol, fix their sleep disorder, and then make their ovaries more sensitive, which we know how to do. But what caused it in the first place? There's a genetic predisposition, and almost always it's estrogen mimicking chemicals from the environment, pesticides, glyphosate, different things that mimic. They're called endocrine disruptors. There's over 84,000 different chemicals, of which there's a few hundred that are endocrine disruptors that could be in play. We have to see which one's out of balance and detox out of the body. The fact that the whole family, it tends to run the family, means there's a genetic component, which we see with estrogen metabolism issues. So make sure the liver is supported and the bowels are supported. So you can see there's a multifactorial approach. That's why it takes a while, because you have to clean up all the different areas. So improve the detox and then improve how the brain is regulating your hormones. So sometimes with this, we actually have to put them on hormone replacement to balance things out. So our PA does that while we work on the other metabolic stuff. It takes a bit. It's a lot of work, I will say, but it is life-changing, because you can actually start to lose weight, because it can be very frustrating for these women in particular that eat exactly how you're supposed to eat and you gain weight. But yes, it has more to do with the insulin, cortisol, hormone stuff. So
Yeah.
just know that there's a solution.
Okay.
Sometimes it goes real fast. I love those miraculous PCOS patients. Most times it's a good 6 month to 2 year process. But once you're there, you know what to do to maintain it.
Excellent. Okay, I said that was the last question. Can we do one more, because I think it
Sure.
affects everybody? So
Yes.
this is a question from Terry Hall. She's one of our top engagers on Facebook, and I want to give her a shout out. Thank you for being so engaged with the channel. But also, what if you don't have a gallbladder? I think so many people, especially women, have this question.
Yep. So yeah, I touched base on that a little bit. So if you don't have a gallbladder, it does mean that there was a disease process already there that was affected, and the bile is still made in the liver system. So you just have a timing mechanism issue where you're not releasing the bile like you would from a normal gallbladder. All the same principles still apply. You're just going to be more sensitive and reactive when it comes to some GI stuff. So you just have to be very on top of supporting the liver system, bile system. So nothing changes. You're just going to be more sensitive than the other people.
Okay, that's interesting, because I've heard so many people say, I don't have a gallbladder, so I can't eat a high fat diet or
Yeah.
the 3 tablespoons of olive oil or anything like that. But you're saying that's not the case.
That's not
It's
the
just a
case. So all a
different.
gallbladder is a storage sac to squeeze the bile out when you eat. So what's going to happen is you just have to eat less of the fat over an extended period of time, because your liver, which is up here, is still making the bile. It's just going to take a little time for it to get to the actual digestive system. So you do have to eat. You can eat the same amount of fat in a day. You just have to do it slower throughout the day.
Okay, okay. And I've also heard, if you are eating animal fats, that for a lot of people, the rendered fats can be really a problem. That means that if you cook something and the melted fat
Yeah.
is and you decide to pour that on your food, that can really wreak havoc on the system, as opposed to cold fats or room
Yeah.
temperature, right?
And I'm going to say one other thing, because the fact that this kind of came up again, I think someone probably needs to hear this, that a lot of people, there's a genetic component to the gallbladder issues in the fat soluble, and fat soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E, and K. So you're more prone to immune systems with the vitamin D. Vitamin E is cardiovascular, vitamin K is clotting factors, and vitamin A is eyes and lungs. So if you have issues with any of those areas, you may need fat soluble vitamins. And if you don't have a gallbladder, one of the things that you can use that's very helpful is choline and choline and milk thistle. So those two things can help you make more bile. And milk thistle helps your bile duct contract to actually deliver it a little faster.
Interesting. This
Yeah.
is there's such a wealth of knowledge. We learn so much when you come on, and people have questions that I haven't thought of to
Yeah.
ask because they're coming from their own personal experience. If you're on the Rumble chat, I wanted to say Millie has posted some suggestions for olive oil over there. If you come back on any of our chats, if you come back to listen to this, please leave a comment after the fact, because unfortunately the live chat on Rumble doesn't show up afterwards. I hope they fix that. But if you're in the if you're in the live chat, go ahead and check that out. Thank you, Millie, for your input. Thank you guys for all of your questions. We had a question about whether you help with diet and let me see, diet and weight loss. And I'm going to go ahead and say yes on that.
Yeah.
And I would say for sure contact him and his team at officialsynapse.com. We can't go into detail for each person right now because there would be very specific questions about all of the factors that would contribute to your diet and your weight issues, whether it's losing or gaining weight. That's a question that would be perfect. Get a discovery call, set up a consultation with the team so that you can get on a protocol that's most effective for you. That's at officialsynapse.com, officialsynapse.com. I'm going to give you that phone number one more time. That is 651-209-9906, 651-209-9906, and officialsynapse.com. Just make sure you say, I found you from Mary Grace. And I was listening to you on her show, or I saw it on her website. Whatever it is, just make sure you tell them that. And I think, let me see if there's anything else I need to remind everybody of. Oh gosh, share this. Share this. And if you're on any of our channels, hit the thumbs up, hit the like, get the word out, tag other people. If you are on my Facebook, I do have a paid subscription. And when you are a paid subscriber, you are going to get access to more exclusive content. So, for example, as we get more numbers in our paid subscriber group on Facebook, we will have events like this specifically for our paid subscribers. So you will have access to Dr. Troy on a much smaller live stream that's just for the subscribers. That's an example of the kind of content you're going to get. If you go to my Facebook profile, there is a little badge that says subscribe, and it's a monthly thing, and it directly supports Mary Grace Media when you do that, and it's fantastic. Same thing. We're going to hope to offer that on other venues and then kind of consolidate everybody. But right now we're focusing that on Facebook because that's where our biggest and most engaged audience is. And so if you're not on Facebook, I get it, but it's just life. That's what we're doing right now. Okay. All right. So I think that's it. Dr. Troy Spurrill, this has been fantastic. One of the best episodes ever. I'm going to say something quickly to R. Lessard on Rumble about cancer. I think your question is a little too in-depth for what we can talk about now, but please do contact Dr. Troy and his team. I know that they work with cancer patients. And so that's going to be officialsynapse.com. Do the discovery call. See if it's a good fit for where you are or your loved one with what they're dealing with right now. Okay. I see your question. We just can't go into depth with it right now. All right. So Dr. Troy, any last words for our listeners today?
No, I just encourage everyone to, we're in a big season of change, and there's some miraculous stuff I think is going to happen with our country and the world. And how you make a difference is becoming the best version of yourself. So just pour into yourself, pour into the people around you, and become the best version of yourself, and see what your gift is, so then you can start to pour into other people. So I really think that's how we're going to make a difference. I really think that's how we come out of this hole that we're in worldwide. And I thank God for all that he is doing for all of us right now. So I appreciate your audience very much. Very, very good questions. I love the questions that come from your audience. So I appreciate everyone that's listening.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks again, everybody, for being here. As usual, please share this out. Please get it to everybody that you know. Somebody could have a major life change and improvement from hearing this information. And like Dr. Troy said, we want to be the best version of ourselves that we can. And that starts by prioritizing our health. And as you can see from this show today, it's really the whole package. And this is what Dr. Troy and his team are going to help you with. They're not just looking at one symptom and throwing a pill at it because insurance covers it. They're going to look at your whole system from the inside out and help you get your body and your mind and your spirit running at optimal levels. So thank you again for being here, Dr. Troy Spurrill. And you are watching the Mary Grace Show. We are coming to you live, and you can catch this on replay on all of our channels. We will see you back here soon on the channel. Have a great day, everybody. Get outside, touch some grass, look at the sun, and enjoy God's creation. Love you all.